Hello, everybody. It's Lenny Murphy with another edition of the CEO series of interviews. Thank you for taking time out of your day to spend it with myself and my guests. Usually, it's only kind of a one-on-one, but today we've got double the trouble. So I am joined by Frederic from Toluna and Renee from Toluna. Thank you guys both for being here. It's wonderful to have you both joining the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks very much, Lenny.
It's so for people who've been living under a rock, maybe just do a quick bio introduction for both of you, but then I know we have a much cooler topic to get into than just the bios. So Renee, ladies first. We'll start with you.
Thank you so much. Renee Smith. I may have seen many of you at conferences at various times. I became part of Toluna a couple years ago when Toluna acquired GutCheck. And I'm the global head of innovation at Toluna. Happy to be here.
And so since you won't say it, I will. We met when you were the chief research officer at Kantar, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
So a long and storied career in thinking about cool stuff in the industry.
Thanks, Lenny.
You're welcome. Frederic.
Hi, I'm working from home, as you see, and I have some kids coming back from school, so you would probably excuse me for that. So yeah, I'm Frederic. I'm the chief executive and the founder of Toluna. Other than that, I'm very excited to be on this call, and really the fact that we're both on the call is reflective of the transformation we're going through and the transformation our industry is going through.
Yeah. No, absolutely. All right, so let's tee this up. I'll tee it up for the listeners. First, a little bit of history. Obviously, been a big fan of both, Frederic and Renee as individuals, as well as Toluna for a long time, and have watched the transformation of the company from a panel provider, right? Although Frederic, you're probably saying, wait, we were far more than that. And yes, I would say that you were, but that was kind of the perception. Into now a really integrated ResearchTech platform with sample and a variety of solutions. What I always liked about you, even though you were a panel provider, was that you had a deeper engagement with respondents, and that you had you had a lot of data on them. And Frederic, I even remember you doing a presentation at SMR, and I always bring this up when we talk, that you were envisioning the future where you were leveraging a very comprehensive data set of the consumers to drive more individualized experience, and you just were more than just sling and sample. Now we fast forward to a couple weeks ago, you guys had announced the launch of your synthetic sample solution, and that wanted to have this conversation because I know that that synthetic sample in the way it's being utilized today was something that you guys were thinking about years ago in terms of its application. We may not have called it that, right? But this vision of how to utilize existing data to drive more value in the insights process and to transform that, to move away from the bespoke project into something that looks a whole lot more organic over time was, you were AI before AI was cool from that standpoint, right? Now here we are, that the technology allows us to do that in a much more efficient way. AI's unlocked capabilities to bring that vision to life, and you're out of the gate with a solution around that. So for this call, I wanted to dive into that with you guys, and for our listeners to kind of get the perspective of one of the major players in the world on this transformation from data collection into data utilization, and how that you're powering that. Again, Renee, I'm going to go to you first.
Okay.
Well, because of your background and the chief research officer, right? You've been thinking about these types of things for a long time. So kind of give me your take on this transformation and where we are and what you're seeing happen now.
Yeah, so I think that one of the things we've seen just consistently over the 25 years I've been in market research is not every decision, but the speed at which some decisions have to be made by our clients. And again, it's not every decision, but there are some decisions that benefit from being able to be made in a series of hours or very quickly. And so when I think about the uses of data, I'm always thinking about like to what value. So you could create synthetic data for the sake of creating it, I guess. But what are the use cases where it can facilitate more speed with a decent level of accuracy? What are the use cases where it can facilitate better measurement? Not even for speed, but just better measurement in general. So I've always had a pretty kind of eclectic view of like data, and for me it's always about what is the purpose. And so I think that the fact that we now have synthetic options in our toolbox as well will over time be able to say, here's the right use case for synthetic, here's the right use case for hybrid, here's the right use case for the human data. And just before I throw it over to Frederic, I do want to say that in terms of data utilization, it's important that that data has sufficient quality. So just using data for the sake of using data, it's important it has sufficient quality. And the industry, you probably remember 2 and 3 years ago, especially, was getting hit by a lot of fraud and bots and stuff.
Oh, still
and
is.
So,
what are you talking about 2 or 3 years ago?
Well, what I will say though is that some companies, Toluna's among them, have made some good strides in detecting that. And if we hadn't, it'd be a very different story in terms of our ability to actually use the data. So good human data goes hand in hand with good synthetic.
Agreed. And Frederic, I want to get your perspective on this as well. I just want to reiterate what you said. The fraud issue when we're dealing with one project was bad enough. But with the advent of AI and synthesized data across massive data sets, it's peeing in the well. Right. I mean, sorry, just to be somewhat crude, but it's just a contaminating factor of the risk of the garbage in, garbage out scenario in the era of AI, especially as we move towards an AI first approach for some business issues. It's just massive, massive. So, Frederic, now you've had this, you've been visionary. I'll say it for you. Kind of thinking about where the industry was going to go. And you're also tasked with driving the financial performance of a large global business with investors, et cetera, et cetera. So what have you been thinking about this transformation? How do you see it playing out at kind of that macro level within the business itself?
So I think that first it's really I want to chime in on what Renee says. It's for us, it's not we want to build synthetic persona or AI just for building it, because we're not at a size where I can just decide and do that anymore, in a way, which is a benefit and a constraint. I mean, it's not a startup, and so the first there's a couple of elements that we need to take into account when we innovate, and I think the first one is there any benefit for our clients?
Mm-hmm.
What's the clear benefit for the client? What is the accuracy of the data or insight that we will be transferring to the client? And I say that because a client might agree that a startup with low fidelity on its new product, the client might accept that because it's a trial and they're not making any decision on that. With Toluna, it's very different because our clients are making very important or very frequent decision based on the insight, the data or the insight that we're providing them. So that's the second part.
Mm-hmm.
And the third part is, I'm always a big believer that I'd rather bring the innovation inside than get the innovation from outside. By that, I mean that I don't think that Toluna or any player in the marketplace, I've seen it with online, can stop the emergence of new technology. And so therefore, I'd rather be part of, embracing it early in advance rather than being subjected to it or by it. I don't know if you say that in English later on. Now, I would say that with a caveat is that I've also observed in the market that, is there really a benefit of being the first mover? I don't know, but that's culturally, that's what Toluna does. I mean, that culturally Toluna like to be first in, not all the time, but and so we are in this position where we can launch this new product and solution, and that's not a panel. By that, I mean, I want to be very clear. Toluna is not launching a synthetic panel. And I explain that maybe in a moment. We've been in this position because we took financial decision which might have been wrong and turned out to be right back in 2019. So which seems to be a long time ago. In 2019, I had a couple of people coming to me from the engineering team. It came from engineering saying, we want to invest in machine learning and AI. And I said, what for? And they said, let us show you what it does, but we don't know what would be the result of that. And actually, you always tend to do what you know best as a company. So what we knew best was, at the time, we knew very well respondent. We knew the problem with respondent. We knew the benefit with respondent. We knew the trick with respondent. We knew the fatigue sometimes with respondent. So we basically use that to build a number of machine learning model in order to identify that, and so we build the foundation. And very clearly, over time and iteratively, I looked at this as being the foundation or the building blocks of the AI strategy for the group. So I don't know if I'm clear enough in my response, but I do believe that these are decisions that you make long time ago, and it's like online. I started Toluna, and it took 5 years to 5 years. It took more. It took for Toluna to start seeing, to being in a position where we knew that we would go out of the nuclear winter of the new economy. We said at the time, took 5 years. So you have to be patient with this decision, and you have to prepare yourself. And at some point, there is a tipping point in the market where it grows. And I used to say, I think 10-5-2. It took 10 years from offline to online data collection, 5 years from online data collection to DIY. And I believe it's going to take 2 years from DIY to AI for the research industry. So that's my big. And so how do we do as CEO, manager, leader like Renee on innovation to make sure that we're relevant in the market, that we bring this value, and that we bring a value that satisfies all the stakeholder. That's really the.
No, I think that's fantastic. Now, so I describe this as an arms race, right? On two fronts. First, there's still the amazing week by week changes just in the capabilities of AI, of LLMs, right? That is still a very unsettled piece of technology, meaning, you start building something on ChatGPT-1 and guess what, right? Here comes DeepSeek or Grok or whatever that just blows it out of the water. And the next week it'll be something else so there's just this continual massive shift in the capabilities of the technology itself. That's leading the adoption curve for sure. Particularly for B2B. So we have that. And then we have obviously the companies that are trying to take these pieces and build solutions that with product market fit happening. And I think what we've seen, my read is that buyers, big brands, right, obviously for a variety of reasons, have been waiting to see if we reach some level of parity. And that's not happening, right? There is no wait until something reaches maturity. We're not in that cycle. I would actually argue from the standpoint of maturity, we bypassed that a long time ago. Now it's just incremental innovation over and over and over again at a very rapid scale. So there's no bystanders now, right? Maybe they were trying to do that, but now it's like, oh crap, we have to do this now. We have to embrace these technologies. before they really start limiting their ability to create more value within the insights function. So that's my long-winded way of teeing up to say, what are you seeing from that standpoint, right? You made these investments, Frederic. I agree that the life cycle is very small now from an adoption standpoint. What are you seeing in terms of client adoption? Are you seeing clients, wanting to embrace these technologies, maybe still cautiously? Are they going all in? Are they just, what's your take?
Renee, maybe Renee first, and then I'll
Yeah. So we have a client, an AI client advisory board, and we've had it for about a little over a year, and we see many levels of kind of readiness, and some of it has to do with initially just kind of getting their arms around AI in the insights area. But some of it also has to do, in very regulated industries, finance, healthcare, there's just a lot of infrastructure that sort of has to be put in place. So there are going to be pockets that are not going to be able to lean in and adopt quite as fast. What I've been very pleased about as we've taken out rapid claims testing with harmonized personas, so that's a quantitative solution for claim screening. What's very interesting is the number of clients that, well, first of all, people want to try it. They absolutely want to try it. But the number of clients who have responded because they're starting to think about, oh, I could use something like that to really do agile iterations. So, we've been talking about innovation processes at brands becoming more agile, and some had been able to implement it, but I think others now see, oh, wait, now I actually can potentially implement it. And so I won't be surprised over time if actually what you start to see is not necessarily even an RFP that comes out to be the agile provider, but that comes out to be the agile screening provider and the agile concept testing provider, right, at that very early stage. So there's definitely some demand there. And I would say the other difference that I see, and this, it's kind of related to the comment that you made, Lenny, but compared to like in 2000 and the adoption of online, at that point, the insights industry seemed to have a culture of, let's wait for one or two of these big brands to do it first. And there's no waiting now, right? Everybody, as you said, sort of realizes they should get in the game. So,
Okay. Frederic?
Yeah, I think we came to market saying AI everywhere at Toluna, and that's true. I mean, because of the things that I've just described. So our clients have been interacting with AI, for some time. The way we, procure sample was driven by machine learning. It's not digital twins by no means. We're not fulfilling the survey without telling the client that it would be digital twins. Then all the quality, the Q, what we call Q sphere, which is a multi-layer AI and traditional methodology quality rather than just fraud detection, because I don't think that there is only fraud as a problem. Quality that has been really there. Then we introduced, using some of that work that we've done around quality. That's when we introduced QProb. I'm giving you the name, not to advertise them, but just to say QProb being probing live in the questionnaire through AI. And I don't know what AI is going to probe. It's like, so we started doing that, and we saw that it was adding 40% of good quality open end. And then we launched, because we did a lot of detection of problematic, not to say fraudulent open end with machine learning and AI. We kind of leverage that technology that we built to do coding sentiment analysis, and so clients are playing with that every day. Like, they go on the platform, they can decide, and we leave them the choice to decide, and we always tell them, or that's driven by AI. So we want to make sure that clients understand what we're doing. And so they've been playing for a long time. When we decided, and actually, you know, we decided to go for building a synthetic panel, for a better word. I mean, in the US, initially, the idea was we want to make sure that it's not just a capability. We want to make sure that it reflects what Toluna has become in this market. So we want to make sure that it can be used for a use case by client, because only by testing use case they would adopt, and then we can launch more use case. So I think I see a good adoption. I think that it's a question of making sure that we're very transparent with client, with the benefit. And sometimes, you know, there is not only benefit in any products, like online. There was no just benefit in using online. There might have been some, you know, some downside versus telephone versus face-to-face at the time. And I think the position in which Toluna is great, because Toluna has changed so much that we're kind of agnostic. You know, people say, well, do you believe in the future of online panel? And I said, you know what, I'm going to give you the answer. But first of all, I want to tell you I'm agnostic because of what the company has, how the company has transformed. So this is really the strategy of the company, is making sure that client can use AI, you know, at a number of different touch points with the company. So this client, when we bring a breakthrough, I think rapid claim test is a breakthrough. I do believe it. Then they're not surprised. They understand that the company has invested in it, that we know what we're doing, and that we're not just trying to sell one product, because we have a broader responsibility in the engagement with clients. So we can't make it wrong. Yep. We can't like sell it and then go for a run.
Sure.
And I don't know if it's clear enough, but
yep, it is. So tell me if you guys agree with this is how I see the future kind of shaking out, right? And I think it's also a description of probably Toluna. So fundamentally, the research industry was based on monetizing process and outputs. That was how we made our money. And those are the two things that are impacted fundamentally by AI from an efficiency standpoint. But in order for that to happen, AI has to have access to data. So we switch back and think that, you know, okay, so fundamentally what the research industry really has as an asset is data as an asset. And that data is the connectivity to humans, right? That is the fundamental difference between ChatGPT that's pulling in from, you know, everything else, and that's great, but it's not quality data that is predictive of human behavior to make business decisions off of, would be my argument, right? To do that, we still need something that looks like research from the standpoint of collecting information, you know, from a sample that is structured in a way that we can predict outcomes. You can make business decisions off of that. But it is that data that is the asset. There's no longer a process of collecting the data. And then fundamentally, we get to a point where you have data, and then you have making sense of data, which is kind of the consulting piece of things now, kind of the implications and outcomes. So the companies that have access to data and have embedded the technologies to be able to extract that, to pass it on to people to make sense of it, those are the businesses that will create real value in the future. That's my take. And
I would have one.
Go ahead.
I would have one nuance to that, which is, and I'll use the rapid claims as an example, is that synthetic personas, our system, the way it's set up, is actually not asking a large language model to pretend to have a profile,
Okay.
which is what was kind of the first stage of things. Feed some characteristics in and ask the large language model to be the persona. Okay, so be Shakespeare, be consumer ABC. What we actually built, because, and I think that's one of the reasons why some of the persona work started out in qualitative. But if you actually think about quantitative and what we're doing, we actually knew that we wanted to create samples. And so we needed the kind of variation that was going to reflect a sample. We couldn't just have segments that were giving us the common answer for that segment, basically. So the first thing I want to say that I actually think it's the individual level data that is particularly important as the seed cases. Can other data be helpful? Yes, but I think the individual level data. And then in terms of what we actually built, we actually, because we don't use the large language model as the persona, we actually built an agentic system of about 20 agents that are doing, you might say that they're doing elements, some of them are doing elements of the human workflow. So there's a agent that programs it in prompts and so forth in the way that a persona can actually digest the information. So the reason I'm making that nuance is that I think that right now there's a lot of talk about like things like agents and using them for efficiency and stuff, right? But actually, you do actually have to have a process, a bit of a process to use personas, and being smart about what that process is going to be is actually also going to be IP. So it'll be data, but it will also be the way in which the systems are actually configured that will also, I think, bring value. And so when we talk with clients now, we have one slide where, we make it, we try to make it as least complicated as possible, but we actually talk about, hey, you're not just plugging information into an LLM. There's actually this kind of set of checks and balances and these agents that are challenging the answer and all that sort of thing. So I think that there's other IP there, I guess is all I'm saying, in addition to the data.
Oh, I think that's a great point. So it's actually, fundamentally, I am a consultant, right? So the only thing I have to sell is my brain. But yet we cannot, it's foolish. And I fought engagement with AI for a long time because I thought it was going to devalue me, right? And recently, really the last 6-9 months, I got over that and discovered it as a superpower. And with that very same concept of, look, the IP is still in my head. The process and how I can configure those processes of utilizing LLMs effectively to take what's in my head and make it deliverable, that's IP as well. So so I think that it's wonderful that you point that out. I think everybody needs to recognize that it's very complex, and the ChatGPT perplexity, that's a different thing. That's tip of the spear, surface level. That's not really where we are from a transformational technology and how it's changing things. All right, so we could talk for a long time, and I want to be conscious of your time as well as the listeners. When you look at the competitive landscape, obviously most of your core competitors that you would think of, particularly those that play in the sample space as well as sample plus data collection, everyone seems to be scrambling to move towards a subscription-based model with the assumption that their data becomes a feed for some LLMs, whether they've built those internally like you have or externally. And that's a big difference for how the industry functions. Although when you started transforming into a ResTech company, you launched that subscription type of model at that time. So you were kind of thinking ahead in that respect as well. So what do you think of what does the business model of research look like as we move forward? Is it clients buying a subscription to a suite of services, which includes access to data, and they're paying a flat amount based on volume of usage? And then they may also execute bespoke projects in that agile approach that you were talking about, Renee, to fill in gaps of information or explore things deeply. I guess to sum that up, do you think we're moving away from the project and even the SaaS license? I'm not sure if that's really the right model going forward either, to something different. that is more of an ongoing subscription that looks probably similar to what people are paying now for use of LLMs. What do you think?
Yeah, Renee, I can go on that. I think it depends where you are in the value chain, and by value chain, I don't mean that there's better than worse in that value chain. But if you're a pure panel player, a panel company, or a marketplace, or I think that the model is going to be different than if you're a company whose mission is to generate, like Toluna, to the trailblazing insight for client. I think the model is going to be definitely different. So I think that for the later, I think that we've done a subscription model some time ago, and at the time it was quite the subscription was quite new, because I look at it and I said, it's almost like it's not really SaaS, but it's SaaS-ish. I would call it this way, in a way. I think we're committed to. Yes, I don't know how you call that, SaaS-ish. I think that there's going to be. I don't think AI would replace fully in our industry, at least not in the next few years. The need for people. So the need for people to, and I'm talking about, researcher or people, managing that infrastructure. I think that the industry is tech-enabled. That's, you could, and it's not fully, even fully DIY. That there is a form of unless you're Qualtrics, maybe there is a form of glass ceiling for pure DIY player in this industry, and that's a recognition that Toluna took on its journey to, notably our M&A. So I don't have the silver bullet for how the model is gonna evolve. I think that you've got a good one with the way tokens are playing with the LLMs and all that. I think that's a good understanding of what's the unique price. Okay, maybe, but for people like us who are delivering more just than a prompt, and we're delivering more than just a complete. We're delivering solution which gives you the ability to measure the equity of your brand, or the efficiency of your investment in ad, or the new innovation in your pack. I think that we would need to take into account those dimensions into the pricing. I do believe that facilitating the interaction of client with those technology and services through a subscription is gonna continue, and that this is something that clients are going to be adopting more, but it's going to take time. So I don't have the silver bullet, I'll be honest, with what the model would be. I think it all comes to what type of value do you deliver. If you deliver a complete, by that, either if it's synthetic or a real individual of a complete, then it's going to be a different model than if you're delivering insight. Mm-hmm. And exactly the same way that the industry is working today. So I think that we will find a good balance in terms of the business model moving forward, but that's going to be iterative in nature.
Right. Renee, what do you think? Especially since you've come from kind of the service side of the industry into the tech side over the past few years. What's that?
Well, we had subscriptions at GutCheck, even though it was full service. And part of the reason for the subscriptions was, and I wouldn't call it wasn't SaaS at all, because it wasn't technology enabled particularly, but part of the reason for it was just the idea of, reducing friction for clients to be able to get a project off and running, basically. So I think we have to also think about that sort of element in terms of the business model. It has to be easy for the user, right? Easy for them to buy. I don't know, I'm just going to speculate here, but we may possibly start to see a difference between the what and the why. And what I mean by that is that when we look at the future, we know that there'll be AI-infused traditional methods will continue for a while, as Frederic was talking about. But we also see the conversational path, and we
Yeah.
also see direct to prediction path. And the direct to prediction might be more amenable for like go, no go decisions, and the conversational might be more amenable for kind of the why around it. And so it's possible that, maybe there's subscriptions for the number of predictions you get out of a direct to prediction system, but then there's the, insights where, the humans are putting more analysis around the conversational. So I don't totally know, but I think that if there are differences, we might see different dimensions on which that plays out as well.
Sure. I agree. And I think one thing that clients will have to adjust to is that if we're driving with an ongoing base of human data, incentives still are involved, et cetera, right? It's not the, we're just sucking it in off of everything posted online. And hopefully that will not be a challenge. It's kind of like when social media analytics emerged. Oh, it's going to replace research and it's cheap. Well, no, that never happened. And clients recognize there is a difference between the type of data you got from social media analytics versus research, and that they'll still recognize that the value. I've been playing this idea in my head, even as a consultant, of value-based pricing, value delivery-based pricing, to shift away from kind of the commoditization component. And I think AI does have the potential to commoditize all types of stuff. So particularly information, if we don't handle the education component of that correctly, that no, the value delivery is very different than just sucking up a whole bunch of stuff and going on ChatGPT and ask for something that that we cannot verify whether it is actually actionable or not. Anyway,
and I want to emphasize too that the part of the value. So if you would have asked me, because internally I was asked this, last September, when we were talking about we're starting to work on the positioning for what became rapid claims with harmonized personas. It was much more at that point a sample play. I'm just telling you how the positioning evolved.
Sure.
And once we started doing all of the testing, we collaborate with the engineers and great R&D team in engineering, and seeing what could be built. I'm actually of the opinion that the value, there's going to be more value that's going to come out of measurement, because we need to think about these personas. If we only think of them as a sample source, we will lose the value. We will miss out on what we can bring to clients, because we want to think about it as what can they do that a human cannot do.
Right.
And
right.
so in rapid claims, as an example, they don't get fatigued. So they can have more claims that get evaluated. Now, that might seem small, but we've got lots of other ideas about what they can do. I'm not going to speak about them, but what they can do for measurement. So if we start really seeing that we can truly measure things that couldn't be measured before, that has a value.
Sure.
A big
Absolutely.
value.
Well, yeah, I think that goes
Lenny,
back
you're frozen. Lenny, I just want to say that you're frozen on the image, but that's just for the viewer later on.
Renee, am I frozen to you?
Not now, no.
No. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Just to
that may be the gods of the internet saying we should probably wrap this up. So, God, this is a great conversation, and I wanted to have this for our listeners to get kind of a glimpse behind the veil, if you will, of leaders in the industry, how they're trying to think about all these things, because it impacts everybody, obviously, and because everybody's having a variation of this conversation somewhere in their organization. As usual, you guys have been ahead of the curve, and I think that's wonderful, and that's just one of the great roles of Toluna in the industry.
I want to throw out something else too, Lenny, that you haven't touched on, but how does size of the company matter? So, so I was at GutCheck. I went from Kantar to GutCheck because I wanted to get in a place where maybe things could move more rapidly. But that was a $20 million business. And so if I'd been there and AI hit, wouldn't have had the resources, right? I'm not saying Toluna is the only company, but I actually feel very happy to be at Toluna because it's the mid-size, right? And we're starting to punch up. But there's more, so there's more resources, but there's also still more scrappiness. It's not perfect. There's not as much scrappiness as gut check. So anyway, I also think that it's possible that mid-level players are going to be, 5 years from now, they're going to be in a very different spot than they are today, potentially because they had the minimal amount or a decent level of resources to play this game and less solidified infrastructure or still that more scrappy attitude or whatever.
I agree with you 100%. And the large players, God bless them, they're doing what they can do, but they also they're fighting a defensive rear action as well, right? The threat of cannibalization for the large global players is significant. And not only, so to your point, not only is it kind of the inertia component of the big companies, there's also real substantive challenges in protecting revenue that has dramatic impact, especially if they're a public company, on profitability, et cetera.
So the grit report, the grit top 50 might look very different in 5 years.
I would agree. Well, I mean, as we're having this conversation, Kantar is going to go away, and at least in its current incarnation. I would also just point out, see if you guys agree with me. It was interesting, that announcement of the Kantar breakup, which we all kind of saw coming. The real value there was numerator and roll panel, right? Like that's the big multi-billion-dollar transaction they're looking for. It wasn't the rest of Kantar. So it was the data asset. And I think that people who pay attention should recognize that was a pretty significant signal for the industry. It wasn't Miller Brown, it wasn't TNS, it wasn't, the old all of those pieces. It was the data asset. So, which you guys, I would say, will be in that league as well at some point.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you wanted to mention that we didn't get into?
No, I think it's. I would say it's to be continued because it's. We believe I said to my team, we just started the race, and it's just you. I think that you talked about an arm race or I just call it a race, and so we're in the race, and we have to drive that vehicle. That's the difference as we build it. So that's what's amazing about it.
Well, I'm not going to bet against you in the race, so so that's great. Renee, anything you want to add?
Good.
Thank you both. This has been a great conversation. I hope listeners that you've enjoyed it as well. I guess last, where can people find you? I assume LinkedIn versus being flooded with emails, but yeah, all right, LinkedIn. So just look for Frederic-Charles Petit and Renee Smith on LinkedIn. That's it for this edition of the CEO series. Thank you guys so much. We'll be back again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lenny.
Thanks, Lenny. Thanks.
Bye-bye.